What are we thinking? I am Carla Leon from Edge, and we have really seen that the only difference between a flourishing congregation and a declining congregation is actually in our mindset. It's in our mindset of being yes and, being the positive, or no but. So what are we thinking, and how are we actually able to change our mindset? And that's really what this video is all about. So to get us started, what are we thinking? Well, does this sound familiar? We just need to get more children. Almost sounds a little scary. We're just trying to pay for the building. We need more bums and pews. So if this sounds familiar and we're looking at this, then really what did all these statements have in common? Well, these are all measuring the wrong thing. And as we know, what gets measured gets done. So measurement is super, super important, and it really does impact our mindset. And so when we're thinking about what we should be measuring, well, we should be measuring not necessarily always our how and our what, but it should all be based on what our why is. And this is based on a very famous TED Talk where they talk about we are so comfortable in saying how we do something and what we're doing and all these tactical pieces, but like what's the inner reason behind it? And I have been lucky and blessed to speak with hundreds, not thousands of people, but hundreds of communities of faith about what's their why. And time again, when I ask them, why are you here, like in this committee room or in this boardroom or on this council, like why have you gathered after hours? Their answer is not that they like committee meetings. Their answer is that they're here to make a difference in the world, so meaning making. And time again, the other answer is that it's genuine relationships. It's all about genuine relationships. And these two pieces is quite beautiful because meaning making and making a difference in the world is something that everyone really can respond to now and really is thinking about. And the genuine relationships to me is just as beautiful. I've actually been in a room 7:30 at night, and people were thinking about like, why are they here and their real why. And it started off about, it's the building. And then I said, yeah, but why the building? And then, well, it's important in the neighborhood. And why is that important? And so digging deeper, and this one woman, she said, well, genuine relationships. And the reason being is when I come to my community of faith and gather, it's the only time that I am genuinely seen for who I am. I lose all my labels. I am not old. I am not young. I am not affluent. I am not poor. I don't have the word teacher on me when I've been a teacher for 25 to 30 years. All my labels fall away and I can just be and have genuine relationships. And this type of thing, this did come from an 80-year-old, and yet I've also spoken to the famous millennials, and their response is the same. It's the meaning making, and it's the genuine relationships. And when we put these together, it's really changing the world. It's what meaning making and connections can do. And in some of our language, that could be kingdom. In our language, that could be, this is what we're taught to do by Jesus. This is how we live out our faith. It's meaning making and connection. And so this is what we're craving, and this is why we're here, but this is also what people in the neighborhood is also craving. And so what's interesting is that this has nothing to do with how do we get more children. It has nothing to do with just paying for the building. It has nothing to do with bums and pews. And so then the question does arise, if it's about meaning making and genuine relationships, what are we measuring? What is our vision of success from this? Or what are we hopeful? And all three of these questions are basically asking the same thing. It might kind of resonate with you differently. So lean into one of these three questions that actually is responding to you. So what should we be measuring instead based on meaning making and genuine relationships? What is our own vision of success, maybe in the neighborhood, within our community of faith, which is really the same thing as neighborhood? And what are we hopeful of? And when we start there, well, actually, so once we know that this is the way that we're going, how do we get started? And so the way that we actually do renewal and the way we start really leaning into this, we've seen a pathway to change within EDGE, and I'm going to show you that to you at the end of this presentation, but I'm going to walk you step by step. What we see is that the very first thing in order to affect change is to hear stories. We know that stories are important, they're hopeful, they inspire us. This is the reason and the catalyst that we might start something new. And so EDGE, we do a lot of storytelling. We are all about stories. We have our newsletter. We have weekly gatherings on Mondays where grant recipients from Embracing the Spirit and our new ministry leaders tell their stories to inspire others. We have an entire map online of all the stories and everything that's been funded, so you can find someone in a similar context and really be inspired by that. And when you hear these stories, what happens next is that the internal leadership of your community of faith gets inspired. And hopefully you're looking around right now and winking at each other because you know that, like, this is you. You're being inspired by some of these stories at this point in time. And what we see is the magic number 3 to get a new initiative off the ground or spark some interest. We know that it takes 5 to start changing the culture of your community of faith to be more adaptive. And we've seen that the average new initiative actually attracts 8 leaders. So lots of interesting numbers there. Then after the leaders are ready to do something, these 3 things happen together. And we call it the change cycle because it happens time and time again. It might happen 3 times, it might happen 28 times. Really, we hope that these things keep on happening. Is that once you're inspired by stories and you have some leadership, your next thing is you come up with an idea. Now, that idea could be, internally, you come up with a great idea that you want to experiment on. But more often than not, actually, the idea comes from conversations with the neighborhood. So individuals and neighbors or partners, and it's from these partnerships that actually even better ideas arise. And then what we see from either an experiment, which is a very small thing, or a new partnership, that really feels like a small win. That feels like success. And we know that success breeds success. So once those things happen, it's actually possible to do something bigger. And these 2 things, really, if your community of faith is not feeling ready for change or ready to reimagine what could be, when you have these small successes, they start to come along with you. And so that's why we call it the change cycle, because this could happen time and time again. And once it starts happening, what we start recognizing is that our existing governance structure, the way that we make decisions, has to change. And so how do we actually create policies and procedures, and how do we act in terms of our governance in order to start saying yes and? And so there's lots of different ways to do this, and we're seeing new governance structures that are emerging, new ways of actually making decisions. We've seen elder systems. We've seen governance as a spiritual practice as a webinar that we have about how to have bubble groups and allow pop-up, and really starting to say yes to some of these new leaders who might start wanting to step into some of these experiments that we're doing. Once that happens, then we're like, oh, wow, this is for real. We need to start telling people about this. And so what we find is that this naturally starts leading to external communication. More partners. It's kind of now is that snowball is going downhill, and it starts to actually roll and get bigger and bigger. And we've actually seen that many of our communities of faith become kind of that hub in the community again. They're kind of the go-to person. If there's an event or if there's an idea, they actually go to the community of faith first. Like, isn't that remarkable? And often some of the people in the lay leadership or ordained leadership, it doesn't really matter. But in this case, we start to actually become the go-to. When people start saying hi to us on the streets, and things change. And when this happens, we actually see that new leaders start showing up. Because, like, who wouldn't want to be part of this growing snowball? Like, the snowball is just picking up more leaders. And so we see that happens every single cycle, that change cycle. More and more leaders keep on emerging and getting excited, especially if our structural alignment is starting to say yes and to them and empowering them rather than discouraging them. And then what happens after this is we really start seeing, as the hub of the community, as someone who's attracting talents and excitement, and as these small wins keep on growing, success breeds success, well, all of a sudden, like, financial sustainability comes. Like it continues to surge in because all of a sudden funders want to fund what you're doing. Donors want to give. You get in-kind donations. All this other stuff happens. Our own spirit about like what we're capable of and our own confidence levels arise. And like we realize that what we're doing is really compelling and really important. It is that meaning making, and those genuine relationships are actually happening. And all of a sudden the financial sustainability comes through. And what we see is that the end goal for us is not really an end goal. It's how do we become adaptive communities of faith to be prepared for whatever the change is. Because the only thing that we can be very assured of is that the change will happen again. So we always want to make sure that that's really what we're trying to do, is how do we continue to be responsive. And so this was really walking through these stages of the pathway to change. This is the existing model of church, and then we see this new thing that's emerging, which is what I walked us through. Really for the existing, there's a planning, decline, and compost, or that can be grandparenting of the traditional church model. Then we see innovation and rebirth is happening. And so all these things, from inspiring stories, internal leadership, this change cycle at the bottom, then brings us out to the other side to all of a sudden become adaptive. And this is things that we're seeing across the country is actually happening. So I just wanted to show that this is possible. It actually starts with the mindset. It starts with some of these inspiring stories, telling them and hearing them and sharing them, and then taking that leap of faith to take that first step and that first experiment, rallying your team. And as that happens, that wave, success breeds success, keeps on happening, and we start really realizing what we should really be measuring might not be what we're measuring today. Happy to have any conversations with anyone about what we chatted about here, and hopefully this is a great resource for you. But even just knowing that there is a pathway is really encouraging. Thank you for all the great work that you guys are doing, and hopefully we'll hear from you soon.